reflect on what we sent and to ask any questions that they have. And then if Margaret and Sheridan, I don't know if Sheridan is joining us or not, but if you could kind of hold off for a few minutes and we'll get to the questions that you have or comments you have as we progress.
The only thing I wanted to say, Harris, is you said for council members to the committee to look at what was sent. Was there anything sent that was not part of this email? Because I don't have anything to look at.
Yes, I sent that out to the committee. Harris?
What are you asking me, Piper?
Do you want me to send out the materials that I sent to the committee last night to Sheridan and Margaret?
Yeah, gonna have to remind me what was in that email, because I don't, hold on a second.
I think there was the 3-year tax rev PDF, the Cassell PDF budget worksheet, and the Excel PDF of the worksheet that we've been working on.
I think you can send out the PDF budget worksheet. Let me open it up and send it to them here.
Okay.
Hold on a second. You'll get this in just a second, Margaret. This is what I think we'll be following along with. I didn't realize that.
Sheridan and Mike Morey are now with us.
Oh, hi, Mike. Hi, Sheridan. So Mike and Sheridan, what I said at the beginning of the meeting was that the main task here is for the committee members to understand what we're proposing. So if you have comments or questions, I mean, obviously, Mike, if you need to respond to a question from the committee, that would be good, but let's hold off on other comments and questions until the committee gets a chance to ask what they need to ask or hear what they need to hear. Okay, Piper and Sheridan and Margaret, I just sent you a PDF file with the budget worksheet that is what I've got up here. And I can share the screen if that seems like the right thing to do.
I'm wondering if a conversation should be, if we should look at that 3-year revenue worksheet first, because it's gonna open up a conversation on how optimistic or conservative we should.
Yeah. So one of the things that we decided to do, I asked Piper to take a look at let me share this with you all. Yeah, here. So I asked Piper for these numbers, and these are the revenues per month for sales tax over the last 3 years. And you know, now these are not when they're received, right, Piper? These are when they're earned, or are these when they're received? So there's a lag. These numbers
are when they're received. Okay. These are when they're received, yeah.
So these numbers show a lag, but what I'm asked Piper to assume was essentially a zero revenue from, well, we know that we have a zero revenue from this spring, which would come in July and August. Correct me if I get this wrong, Piper. July and August, there's like a 2 or 3 month lag, right?
Yes.
So these two zeros represent basically March through, June.
Yeah, there's 3. So June is 0, July and August are 0. Those are representing April, May, and June.
Right. And so we're trying to be realistic about what to assume for the next budget year. And then a conversation that went on amongst John Piper and I last night, I think it was, or yesterday, was what should we assume in here as how much are we going to earn in the summer? And so the Piper had put in a 25% assumption. John and I said, well, that sounds a little optimistic given our situation. Why don't we assume a 10%? So rather than 10, I don't know how many weddings you normally have in a summer, Cliff.
25 to 35.
Yeah.
We're still hoping to do a lot of weddings this summer. Obviously, we learn something new every day.
Right. So we assume here 10% of them instead of a quarter of them. But we can change that. But that's what this assumption is. And then
go ahead and make a conservative assumption. We're hoping that we'll start late and that we'll go a little bit late, and obviously need to talk with our clients about what they can expect for weather in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what
Right.
social distancing is going to mean for weddings,
Right.
but we're still working to preserve our wedding business for the summer and the fall.
Yeah. So this is a we're assuming that this is a quite conservative. Instead of 25 or 30 weddings, you have 3. And then we made an assumption going forward for the ski season of an 80%, a 20% cutback, and that number is a reflection of the comments that Mike Mon made at the recent town council meeting. So this has gotten updated since Wednesday. I don't know if that's a conservative number or not. It's a conservative number if life is more or less back to normal, except people don't have money. It's a not conservative number if we have a spike and people can't travel, or if the ski area can't open on time or at all. I mean, so we're doing the best we can here by being conservative. So that's where these numbers are. That's the assumption there.
Yeah, I saw what you did there, and you got to start with something, and we know it's going to change, but it seems like a reasonable place to start.
Okay, good. Now, I want to stop sharing that screen, but I don't know. Am I still sharing it? I am.
Yeah.
How do I get rid of that? I'm confused about how to stop sharing. I'm not seeing my, oh, wait, let's see, here we go. Okay. All right, so now I should share this screen. Okay.
So I'll just say at the bottom of that, the bottom right number is the number that we then plugged into the spreadsheet for the
so that's
tax,
where I'm going
the
now.
896.
Right, and you can see that here. So let's see, here's the 896.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that assumption. Property taxes, we just assumed basically that's, well, Piper, you can start talking. I mean, the assumption here is the same. So on the big numbers on the revenue side is we just carried that number forward. Sales and use tax, you can see that that's that conservative assumption. There's the 80%. What next?
We also brought down the fourth quarter tax because that's based on the sales tax as well.
Right. So here's that, oops, here's that reduced right there. Okay.
Can I ask a few questions about this worksheet?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
First of all, I have tried to read this. I may be missing things, but we go 18-19 budget, 18-19 actual, 19-20 budget, and then the next column that I would expect to see would be 19-20 actual.
Yes. So, and you're looking at, tell me if you're looking at, one of these is much more updated than the other. If it's a Cassell sheet, the next number is the percentage of the 1920 that we've spent so far.
What does ACT stand for?
Actual.
Percent of actual. So I would assume, I mean, that's a useful metric, but I would assume that the next column that I would see would be the current year actual.
Well, so that is current year actual. It's just in a percentage and not a number. So
I know. I wonder if we could have both.
Yeah, you can, but I can't do that instantly.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, as I read it, I understand that it's a percentage, but I would expect the numbers to track. So the sales tax collected.
And let me just throw something out there. So you're looking at the Cassell sheet and not the Excel sheet, right? I know they're both PDFs, but
I'm looking at what you sent. It's dated April 12th, 4:23 p.m.
That's what I've shared. I think it's the same document.
It's the one on the screen. So that's
Yep.
Cassell. So that actual percentage number is up to date, whereas it's not up to date on that Excel PDF that I sent out. And that's just a technical problem with exporting the data. So
Okay. So 10/31/300, the sales tax actual current year, that represents sales through what date?
January. We're still expecting February and March.
Through January 31st?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Those are my questions.
Okay.
I'm working out a number for you there. So that would be $816,000 is what would be in that cell if there were the column that you're asking for, Cliff. So the 73% I just multiplied 73% times the budgeted amount.
Gotcha.
And I got $816,000. So for any particular cell that you're interested in, I understand why you want the whole column, but for any particular cell, I think we can calculate it in real time if there's a particular need to do that.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I would have done that. I just thought it was more useful to know the percentage than the actual number, because if you just saw the actual number, you'd be thinking in your head,
How far
70
along
or
are we?
80%. Yeah.
Could we have both?
Yeah. I'll get both. Yeah.
Yeah, it would just decrease the width of the next column, I would expect.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other highlights that we need to bring up on this page, Piper? Should I move on?
Oh, let me scroll down on what we talked about.
This is not, this is the document you sent out. I did not, that I just emailed to Margaret and Sheridan. That's why I opened it anew. This is not the document that had the highlights that we talked about an hour ago.
Right. Okay. No, really, if we go down to 1039 to the contributions and transfers, that's
Okay.
where we wanted to talk.
Right. So you'll see, committee members, a pretty big number here in this cell. That is the use of unreserved fund balance to make the total budget balance. And you can see that that number is substantially more than the current year's number. And the reason why it's as big as it is because of those assumptions about the decreased revenues. And we have some strategies for getting that number down that Piper's going to outline
Okay.
as we go forward.
Should I do that now?
Yeah, I think that that makes sense. I mean, it's a combination of revenues and decreased expenditures.
Okay. So there are a number of ways to get that number down. And one thing is $87,000 is available to us. $77,000 is owed on our books. We've been carrying for a long time from the sewer department, sewer fund to the general fund. We have more than 900,000 in the sewer public treasurer's fund that's sitting there for emergencies and infrastructure replacement. And Harris and I talked about paying that complete, getting it off the books and paying that complete debt off. So it'd be 77,000. And we budgeted 10,000 also from the water department to pay it off their debt slowly. So that could be $87,000 that could come into the general fund.
And would lower this 113,000 by that amount.
And how much is
With
in,
no other changes.
I forgot the reserve in the water. How much is that? That's pretty healthy too.
Not as healthy. It's only like 350,000.
The reserve in the water is lower than the debt that the water fund owes to the general fund, whereas the reserve in the sewer is what, 15 times, 13 times what the debt from the sewer fund is to the general fund. And so that's why Piper and I are proposing to take the money from the savings in the sewer fund and pay off the sewer fund's debt, because the sewer fund savings balance is higher and the debt is much lower. And so it wouldn't be as impactful on a need to expend money if we were to have such a need.
Right. Another thing to consider, unless anyone has questions on that, is we also have a big fund balance in the impact fund that's in the public treasury fund. And there have been things already identified in there that we could reimburse the town's expense on, and some of that has to do with money that we paid to survey the land that we got from the Forest Service that our buildings are on. And we're talking about, we think that close to 59,000 qualifies for reimbursing the general fund out of there. And I think that there is, John, is there 150,000 or so in that fund?
A little over 120.
120, you're right. I'm sorry. Yep, 125.
Excuse me, we're talking about the capital fund?
No.
Impact fee.
So for example, the Snow Pine impact accounts for a lot of this money. And when a building is built, they have to pay an impact fee, and those impact fees can be spent in restricted areas. Those are the areas that are actually related to that growth. And we have not expended that money, we've collected it. And so I've asked Holly and John to confer on just where those reimbursements could be allocated. So there's some tens of thousands of dollars there as well that could come back into the general fund. Money that the general fund expended but never did get reimbursed for from the impact fees. So both of these ideas are saying, are in the category, well, the impact fee issue has to be resolved within X number of years from when you collect the money. So you don't have forever to do what we're talking about doing now. And we're getting close to the end of the period, the window when we're allowed to do this. So this ought to happen irrespective of our expectations next year in terms of sales tax. But both of these ideas are, I would call, in the category of unfinished business from the past that we're trying to clean up, and are to our advantage in a year that we anticipate being relatively lean.
Yep.
Okay. What else have we got in here? On this page, I think there's nothing else out of the ordinary. On the next page, let's see, what is this? Okay, that's the administrative budget. There's also nothing in here, I think, out of the ordinary. If you compare these numbers in the column 2021 with the 1920, you'll see they're pretty well aligned. The differences have to do with, where there are differences, have more to do with our actual experience. So for example, on line 1045-110, we just thought that 7,000, we're going to exceed that number. So, right, Piper? Is that why?
Yes.
That's 8?
Yes.
Just to, so this isn't there's something of a theoretical increase, but it's also based on our spending patterns year to date. Have I covered this page adequately, Piper?
Yes, if you wanted to jump down to the 1050, 340, or yeah, 340, the CWC.
Ah, yes. Okay. If we if push comes to shove, I got a CWC finance committee meeting this afternoon, and we're going to presumably talk about dues from the members. And this is it's not so much that it's a controversial topic, it's a topic without clear principles behind it. And so I don't know what we're going to be asked to contribute yet. What we built into this spreadsheet or into this budget worksheet is the same as last year. I think that, there was some discussion in the last CWC meeting about, well, what are we being asked to spend money on and where can we cut, because all of the municipalities are going to have a lean year. We're in less bad shape than some of the other municipalities because of the timing of this. We lost 6 weeks of sales tax in the ski season and perhaps much of the summer. But the summer is a relatively small amount of our annual revenues. So compared to Salt Lake City losing, revenues in April and May and June, and hurts Alta much less. So I don't know what we're going to be asked to do, but this is a number that I think I certainly don't expect to be asked, and I wouldn't agree to pay more than that. And I think that if the budget committee or the town council finds itself needing not to spend the whole $15,000, I'm happy to go to the CWC and say that's more than we can afford this year. I don't think that's given all that other money that we were talking about bringing in just a minute ago, I think we're okay with the 15,000, but I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, Harris, I mean, I think even in tough times, it's just not that significant an amount of money. And let's just, I would say wait and see, but you're going to be part of the process. And I'm sure that there's going to be a organization-wide reassessment of what the CWC can afford to spend in the coming year. And, you know, I would imagine that we'll just maintain our same proportion and keep our seat at the table.
Yeah, so Summit County and Park City, as I mentioned in the town council meeting, have not remitted their money for 1920, are talking about decreasing their contributions by a third or a half. And so what that would mean is that our proportion goes up because the total goes down. The 15,000 represents a relatively high per capita cost, but as you say, Cliff, it is not that much money. And I think it puts us in a very strong position on the commission that we're giving as much as we give on a per capita basis. So I think I agree with you. I'd like to keep it there, and that'll be my overture this afternoon.
Well, I would guess that the commission members will come to a consensus across the board for a percentage decrease, and that, you know, if there's a 1/3 cut, then everybody will make a 1/3 cut, and if that were the case, we'd end up at 10,000.
That's right. That's why I said that, is because you were talking about proportionality, and I agree with you that makes sense. That was not one of the draft budget proposals floated at the last meeting, but frankly, I didn't understand those draft budget proposals, and I made that point, but I didn't get a satisfactory response. I got how can I put this nicely? Ralph Becker sometimes repeats things that he's already said rather than adding new information. And I don't know that I conveyed my confusion in a way that prompted a clear response with new information. So, okay. This is a big number.
42,000.
Yes. What is that all about?
That's includes 40,000 for the Flagstaff paving.
Okay.
Which has already been approved in the capital projects plan from last year.
Okay, good. Just pointing out the big number. Okay. How are we doing on time? We're a third of the way through in a half an hour. Okay. Nothing out of the ordinary here, I think. And ditto here. What's next?
Wait. Are you in 1051, 645?
1051, yeah. Yeah, 645. Okay, go ahead. You've lowered that.
I've lowered that. The
Right.
question has come up before on the, ACVB budget. I'm putting it in there because I was cutting a lot of things on the expenditure side, so I want the council to talk about that.
Yeah, so the 6,000 in prior years is what we had contributed. Last year, we decided to put in another 2,000, but we haven't
No, wait. I'm sorry about that. I would thought we were talking about ACVB and we're actually talking about the shuttle. You're right about the shuttle.
Okay, well, let me finish this, just
Yeah.
since this does go down.
Yeah.
The shuttle last year, we agreed to spend another couple $1,000, but it turned, whoops, did I just stop sharing my screen?
Yeah.
Sorry. There we go. The 8,000 was actually not any more useful to the shuttle than the 6,000. It isn't enough on the margin to add a shuttle or to add service. So Piper put that back down to 6,000. Have I got that right, Piper? That's right.
I think that was for this year. Yeah, I think they said that they could not, for this year, they could not increase the service.
Yeah.
And actually this year, even though they stopped early, we told them to keep that money, whereas some of the other companies that pay on a monthly basis had decided that they wanted to stop paying and get a credit maybe, or get a credit for next year, which we said we did not need. So.
Right. Okay. Rest of this page. Okay. So you want to go down to here, I think, is the next place. This 16,000 is higher than the 10. We have another vehicle now.
Yes.
Um,
And our spending from the previous year.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Go ahead and talk about this number.
Where are you?
ACVB 10-55-310.
Well, ditto what I said before. The subjects come up before on this, and I was cutting places wherever I could, and I wanted the council to talk about the possibility of whether that should be.
Yeah. So this is
it goes
more
from
of
7,000 a month
to 6. Yeah. So this is mainly a placeholder for the discussion of, what are we going to do to deal with this big number? And we think we have other strategies, but we wanted this use of unreserved fund balance that we talked about before, but we wanted to make sure that we got this on the radar screen. So we put in a number that was lower than previously.
Yeah.
I think that once we get feedback on the idea of the sewer fund paying off that debt, and we get a better sense of the impact fee reimbursement, we'll have a more solid understanding of what our recommendation is there. Is that fair, Piper?
Well, to an extent, but really, if those funds do come into the general fund, we're really only lowering the use of our unreserved balance. We're not changing any of the other expenditures, really.
Right.
Right.
So the question is what do we want to spend on this?
Yes.
In a year that we expect to be difficult. I don't know if that means they need to do more marketing or if it's futile to do their marketing. I don't know.
Probably somewhere in between. I mean, to cut by 1,000 a month seems like a reasonable start.
Okay, good to get that feedback. What's next, Piper? Let's see. Oh, here we go. So later this week, So later this week, I have a meeting of the UFA Finance Committee. I have gotten now the commitment from the chief and from the UFSA board chair to hold our fire protection costs at status quo, there'll probably be an inflation adjustment, but so we made it 78,000 instead of half of 153. It's half of 156. To hold it status quo for the remainder of this year, what that will do is put the taxpayers in the position of having to pay the UFSA mill levy for the 21 calendar year, because the tax assessment is done on the calendar year, and they won't be billed for that until November of 21. So if we assume 533 and we take equals 533 divided by 2, and the 78 equals this minus, I figured this out once before. Okay, so if we assume that the rate that our taxpayers will be paying is 533, then the 6 months from July to through December would cost 267, but we're going to get it for 78 for a savings of $188,000. That's one advantage of this outcome. And the other advantage is that our taxpayers get to delay any payment until they don't have to pay this bill until November of 21. So that's where the 78,000 is in here. Now, I don't have a commitment that's firm on this from the UFSA board. I have it from the board chair and the chief. I'm going to the finance committee meeting on Thursday. I will have, I think, their commitment from the finance committee, at least that's what I'm expecting. And then the board meeting where I would know this is on the 21st is when I would make this pitch. So it's next Tuesday is when I'll make the pitch to the whole UFSA board. And in May is when they would make a preliminary approval of the budget. So we still have a little bit of time to understand what's going on, but anyway.
Nice going on that, Harris. That sounds promising so far. And then I guess we'll have to, as part of making the 2021 budget, we'll have to wrap our heads around the process of the property tax rate decrease, which then does that come halfway through the property tax year? Is that what we're going to have to do to make the transition to UFSA?
Well, so let me go back up to the top page here. It is true that there's $153,000 in here of revenue that is currently being used for fire protection.
Yeah.
Now, if and half of that would not be used in the second half, that would not be used in the second half of the 2021 budget. That's true. I am wary about decreasing our property tax rate because we're already so dependent on sales and use taxes in a year where we don't know what is going to happen at all. So I would not want right now to tell the taxpayers that we're going to lower their tax rate only to have to come back and raise it because sales tax revenues fall substantially. This number is the stable number, and this number you can see this is you know, we are guessing at the 80%. If it's 50%, then you know this is down to, you know, $600,000 or $550,000. So I would caution the committee and the town council from giving back the other half of this money too soon.
I would, you know, don't we normally, it seems like every couple of years we try to increase our property tax to keep up with inflation.
Yes.
We just did that. We just increased the property taxes last year.
Yes.
So maybe we wait it out a year or so and just see, maybe we can somehow find a way to not do an increase, you know, like we have been every couple of years.
Well, this budget assumes no increase in property taxes.
Correct. Yeah. But I'm just thinking for the next, you know, next year when this
Right.
kind of the property tax owners are going to get hit with the UFSA
Right.
charge, maybe we just can kind of wait and see instead of us increasing ours like we do every couple of years.
Well,
Maybe there's a way we could leave it.
Right. I was assuming that we just leave that alone for a little while. And how long a little while is I think we just have to, my recommendation would be to wait and see.
Well,
I understand the impulse.
well, it's not an impulse. I mean, let's run the numbers and see what we can do to, you know, as we've been talking to Stuart for the past few months, and you know, as I've come on board with what you've proposed, Harris, part of that plan is that we're going to drop property taxes. So let's at least run that as one of our alternative scenarios, and look at where that leaves us if we effectively drop the property tax rate. You know, I assume you have to do it in steps since you're trying to make this 6-month transition for the 2021 budget. But I think we got to run that as one of our alternative scenarios, that we drop our property tax rates to leave our property taxpayers with a net total 15% increase.
Oh, I think that's what happens if there's no change. That has been my, so I don't know exactly how I gave you the impression I had been building in a decrease. I hadn't been. So I think maybe we didn't communicate effectively on that particular detail, Cliff. All of my estimates held our property tax rate constant, not compensating the property owners in terms of an increase that they were getting elsewhere. So I understand that you want to talk about that. I'm just trying to be clear about what I felt like we had been talking about. So we can revisit that issue, but that 15% is holding this constant. And the reason why I had assumed that was because I didn't want to get even more dependent on sales tax as a percentage of our revenue. And that was even before this was back in January, before the COVID-19 crisis. So my feeling about that is stronger today than it would have been had that not happened. But let's revisit that.
Yeah, I guess maybe I misunderstood what I was reading. I better go back and do my homework. It sounds like there's some gaps in my learning, but what you're saying, Harris, is that after a property taxpayer takes the hit for the UFSA mill levy, the net 15% increase that property taxpayer is going to see assumes that the town of Alta did not drop its property tax rate?
That's how I was understanding it. Chris, let me confirm that with your numbers. You didn't assume a dropped rate in our property taxes when you gave those examples, correct?
I'm not looking at that worksheet right now. I mean, when we put those numbers together in February, I believe it was. No, I think I recall talking through the notion of lowering our property tax rates equivalent to the increase that the UFSA levy would amount to, and maybe that was just internally. I don't remember where or how we're having that conversation.
Let me ask it a different way, and then I admit maybe I have to go back and do my homework again, but this is all new to me. I thought that basically the 152 that the town of Alta is not going to have to pay to UFA anymore. We're going to give that back to the property taxpayers in the form of a rate decrease.
Yeah, we can choose to do that. That was not the assumption that that we built into those numbers. As I'm pretty confident that we had that discussion and didn't build those in. But we can do that, and it will lower. What it will do is it will lower the increase in their tax expenditures.
I got to go back and do my homework. So I've probably said enough, but I had believed all along that the net 14.6 property tax increase took into account that effectively town of Alta's giving back that $152,000 that the town's not paying to the property tax payers in the form of a rate decrease.
Yeah, I think it was just the difference between what they're paying now and what they would be paying to the UFSA. But we can, as I said, let's talk about it again.
And Cliff, are you talking about the 21-22 budget?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm talking about when we move over to the UFSA regime.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. What are the other? Let's see. What else do we need to do here? We're scheduled till 11:30. Is that right?
Yes, I believe.
Okay.
Does it say? I thought you were a host. I'm not sure.
I don't remember. Yeah, I think. Okay, hang on a second. I can look.
I might have said till 12, actually.
Oh, all right. I don't remember what you said, but okay. No, it's 10:30 to 11:30 is what the agenda that we sent out in public does. So we should probably do what we said we were going to do since we noticed it. Okay. There's another. Okay, so here's something to talk about is that just came up this morning when Piper and I were talking. So this is the previous. Let's see. Here's the fire protection page. Going down a couple more pages, we get to the summer program. If our pessimistic assumptions play out, there will be a decrease in these summer expenses because we won't be setting up a volleyball court, for example, or having porta potties, etc. It's now 11:20. Let me see. I think we're pretty well through the main part of the budget. We haven't talked about capital and water fund and sewer fund, although we mentioned some of those issues, but I think we should leave those for a future meeting. Let me stop and let me see if Sheridan or Margaret or Mike Morey want to give you guys some time now.
I'm good.
Okay. Margaret, you're muted. Okay, there you go.
I had a question, and admittedly, it's because I'm just looking at this in real time, but I was confused about your discussion with the fire. It sounded like the property tax assessment was not going to be in this November, but in November of 21. So there would be a year that we would stay on UFA versus the 6 months. So maybe I'm misunderstanding. If it's not until November of 21 that property tax payers would be assessed under the UFSA service district, then why are we only paying for half a year of UFA?
Yeah, no, I can explain that. It has to do with the difference between the budget year being a July 1st budget year and the tax year being a calendar year, Margaret. So UFSA collects taxes in November of a year for that year. And so they have to have enough money to make it through that year until they get their revenues, because taxes are paid in arrears, not prospectively. Is that an adequate response, or do you want me to keep talking?
Well, that helps, but so if we pay in November of 21, we join essentially in July of.
No, we'll join in January of 21, but we don't pay until November. So we're going to move forward now that we took the vote at the last meeting with the process of joining, but we will make the effective joining date January 1st if the UFSA agrees to continue our price for the rest of 2020 rather. So we'll join in January.
Okay.
And
So
we'll pay for all of 2021 in November of 2021.
okay.
Sorry, yeah, that yes, I left that part out about when we actually become members of UFSA. That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
No, thanks for the question.
I had maybe just a down in the weeds question for Piper on line item number 10-54-620 for miscellaneous services in the police department. And I'm just, looking at the 3-year difference there where, the upcoming number would be 5,000. And Piper, I was hoping you could just walk me through that. Have we budgeted 5,000 in the past in that category, and the other numbers are overruns, or I guess I'm just not getting my head around the reduction in the number there.
I didn't look at previous budgets, Mike. I'd have to see what that actual was for 18-19. My guess is that a service was allocated to a different department, but can I get back to you on that? 10-54-620, right? The 16,000 down to 5,000.
Yeah, well, and we're 80% of the way through the 5,000 this year, so we've spent 4,000. I think, Mike, this 5,000 was carried over from this 5,000, given that it looks like it was adequate. That's why I'm guessing is why that number's in there. But it is a good question why this 5,000, why this number 5,000 is so much less than in previous year.
I think I've come up with that, Mike. I believe that in the previous year, the metering and the 4x4 enforcement was grouped under there, and now it has its own line item.
I think you could be right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's why these are zeros, is because they didn't exist previously.
Right.
Thanks, Piper.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else in the last couple of minutes that you want to talk about? I can go down to, where are we here? Let me go down to the water. Notice we're bringing in 150,000. These numbers are very unclear to me. And it has to, these have to do, this 162 and the 63 have to do with these grants. I don't know what really is going on with those. Those have to get, we need to figure that out, John. And, you know, pretty quickly, because those numbers don't seem very solid. And similarly, oh, no, I'll point out to the committee and to the council members, this is for the medium. And one of the, that we have to buy every third year or so, because it lasts 3 years. And although there are 2 sets of it. So is that right, Piper, or is it just one that we're buying every 3 years?
I think 30,000 includes both sets.
Okay, so and you notice that we're collecting $32,000 less. I mean, Piper put in some numbers here to get this to balance, except for that. But I think that one of the things we have not done in this water sales is we should probably be building in a $10,000 a year revenue stream, because every third year we're spending $30,000 on the antimony treatment medium. So I'll point that out on this. Yeah, go ahead.
A couple things, if I can interrupt, a couple things wrong with this budget, which I haven't been able to straighten out, but we'll start at the beginning with those water grants. John has indicated to me, you know, it's such a back and forth and so much bureaucracy there. But if we ever get that money, well, first of all, we should point out that the money in the 1920 budget, all those big numbers, aren't going to happen. We're never going to see that in this budget year. But I carried over those same numbers, but they're probably going to be lowered. So that's 63,288, which is in line 5139, 300. That could go down to approximately 50,000. And of the 162 above that, 50,000 would be our matching part of that. And then there's another big chunk of money. It could be 80,000, it could be more, it could be less, but at some point we're going to have to pay a portion of that Grizzly Gulch water line to the Schranz estate.
Yeah, I've inquired if we could get so far I don't know what that is.
Right.
Or they're still not, they have not hooked up that line at the top or at the bottom yet. It's probably 2 or 3 days work. And Piper was right. I mean, we're still working diligently on that grant. There's so much back and forth. They've asked us a spreadsheet worth of probably a day or two's work to respond to some questions they have, but we're getting closer, and we should know by the end of this month what those numbers are going to be.
Yeah, we got it. Well, and part of the issue here is that some of this money that we're spending on these grants are things that we knew that we wanted, and some of these things are, as I understand it, some matching funds to get more money, but that we might not have had to spend today. So I'm a little, since you know, to make this balance here, Piper put in this number of 162 from the water reserve, and the water reserve does have a positive balance of a few $100,000, but it also has the water fund has a debt of that amount. So I'm a little wary about spending water reserve money until we work out what's going on here. But in any case, we have to get this back to balance here.
Another thing we're tackling is nowhere in the water fund has admin and IT expenses ever been paid by the water department. It's really been absorbed by, you know, the deputy town clerk and myself. So,
So I think that,
number may
yeah,
have to change as well.
yeah. So kind of consistent with, or as part of our conversation about the property taxes, I think we ought to talk about the water rates, because I think that each of these aspects of our budget ought to make sense. And so, all right, we are out of time for today. We'll schedule a follow-up. Thank you. We'll get some more numbers to you guys.
Thanks. You guys did a lot of work.
Yes, thank you very much. Incredible amount of work. Good job.
Okay, we're trying. We're trying.
Thanks,
It's,
all.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
If anyone has questions, please let us know.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Take care.
Mhm. Leave meeting.